Tasting wine then. There are essentially 3 stages to tasting wine. First, you look at it. Secondly, you smell it. And finally, you taste it. So, when you look at a glass of wine, the first thing to see is this actually what you expected to see? Is it bright and clear, or is it dull and cloudy? If it's bright and clear, we're good to go. If it's dull and cloudy, we might want to question it. Does it have any bubbles in it? And if it does, should they be there? If you've got a wine that's undergone a secondary fermentation, then that might be a fault. But in something like champagne, of course, it's exactly what you're looking for. So if you've got a glass of champagne and it doesn't have any bubbles in it, again, you should be suspicious. Right, the colour. The colour then will give you an indication of age. On a white wine, the lighter the colour, the younger the wine. As it ages, it will get darker. With reds, you'll find that there's more pinks and purples in the colour as they're young, and when they age, they will be more brick red, garnet and orange. Tip your red against the white background and look at the edge, the rim of the wine. That's where it'll show you its true colour. Check to see if there's any tears or legs running down the glass after you've swirled the wine. If you've got a wine that's got a lot of alcohol in it, or a lot of sugar, or both, you'll see these little tears forming on the glass. Again, that'll give you a little clue as to what it might taste like. Make a mental note of the closure that came out of the bottle of wine. Was it a real cork, like these behind me, or was it a screw cap, or a plastic cork, or even one made of glass? If it's an inert substance, like a screw cap, a plastic cork, or a glass closure, then the chances are the wine will be fine. There are a few faults you've got to look for, but they're really very, very rare. The main fault with wine comes from natural cork, and it's where the cork hasn't been treated correctly in the preparation process and has ended up spoiling the wine. Essentially, it reacts and imparts some of its musty flavour into the wine, making the wine corked. If it smells of damp cardboard or mould, then be suspicious. It shouldn't. It should be clean and attractive. So, even before we smell it, we're checking to see if there's any faults or the potential for any faults to be there. Then we swirl it before we have a good sniff. That releases some of the aroma and makes it easier to detect the aromas that we're going to try and look for. Again, we should be looking to see if the wine is in good condition. Corkiness we've dealt with, but again, does the wine smell like sherry or Madeira, but actually is neither? If it does, both sherry and Madeira are oxidised as part of their natural aging process, or some of them are at least, then it's possible that the wine might have oxidised too. Air's got in, wine might have got out, and the wine might have spoilt because of contact with oxygen. So let's make sure that it doesn't smell of sherry or Madeira, unless of course it is one of those. Is it pleasant or is it unpleasant? Very simple question to ask. Secondly, fruitiness. On white wines you might taste things or smell things like lemon, apricot, passion fruit, maybe something like that, gooseberry with something like Sauvignon Blanc. With red wines you'll get a flavour of something like blackcurrant, plum, maybe that sort of thing. Maybe blackberry. Different grape varieties smell of different things, so sometimes it's easy to pick up the grape variety from the nose. There might be leafy hints. If you've got Sauvignon Blanc, it can taste a little bit or smell a little bit like gooseberries or freshly cut grass, that sort of thing. You might find some minerality in here. There might be a little hint of chalkiness maybe, which will come from the soil that the grapes have been grown on. Or you might find a little hint of honey if the grapes have got super ripe. If the wine's got oak on it, it'll show up as a smell of vanilla or a woody spice like cinnamon. We need to be a little bit careful with oak. Oak should be the seasoning on a glass of wine, like salt and pepper on your food. It should enhance the flavour that's already there, rather than dominate in its own right. And if all you can smell is oak, then there's a slight cause to be suspicious, because oak can be the veil behind which either unripe grapes or poor winemaking may be hidden. So check for oak. We can then move on to the next stage. But already we should have an idea of the sort of condition the wine is in, how old it is, the grape variety that it's been made from, maybe how good the wine is, a level of quality. Is it full or light? Is it sweet or dry, or likely to be? And then finally, we taste it. What I've done there is put some wine in my mouth and then brought air in as well, forming my tongue into a little bit of a point, spiralling the wine around it in the hope that it gets air and crucially contact with everything I've got to taste with. So all my taste buds come into play and I'm trying to get as much as I possibly can out of that little taste of wine. Acidity and ripeness. Acidity tends to be higher in cooler climates, ripeness tends to be higher in warmer climates, but crucially the two should be nicely in balance. One should be balancing out the other. Alcohol, again, you'll get a little bit more alcohol in a warmer climate where the grapes have got riper. Please don't be hung up too much on alcohol. It might say 14.5% on the bottle, but it's all about balance. That's the only thing that's measured and labelled as such. But the whole thing is about balance. So we're looking at the entire wine, not just the alcoholic content. It should be appropriate to the style of wine that you have. And in red wines, you'll find tannin. Tannin comes from the grape skins. It's a preservative in red wine. It's what makes it last longer and hopefully improve if it's good enough to start with. So it also is very important to have a little bit of tannin in a red wine if it's going to go with food, because it does help tremendously with food matching. It helps the wine stand up to the food that you're going to pair it with. Again, when you taste it, oak again could show up as vanilla, tends to give sweetness is almost the wrong word, but it's a little hint of sweetness about wines that have been in oak. And then length. When we talk about length and the finish on a wine, that's the amount of time it takes before the flavour of the wine has gone, after the wine has physically left your mouth. Now you've probably swallowed it, professional tasters would spit it out, but crucially the flavour should last after the wine has gone. And the longer it lasts, generally speaking, the better the quality of the wine. Finally, of course, do you like it? Is this your sort of thing? If you do like it, why do you like it? And if you don't, why not? What would you drink with it? Is it value for money? Is it worth what you paid for it? Wine will keep. Not all wines will keep, but good ones will. But they have to be good to start with, of course. You can simply take a poor young wine, leave it for a few years, and it'll be a poor old wine. It won't be any better. So check to make sure if it's a wine that should be kept or whether it's a wine that should be drunk relatively young. Quite a lot of them are intended for early drinking. And finally, enjoy.